अपना तो इतना था कि we can't pay you anything. We'll just eat momos and noodles at the end of the day. And maybe you might get enough money to pay a phone bill perhaps. Sometimes I see the lenses, अरे Master Prime, okay, 12 लाख का lens, इसी को ले जाता हूँ. There are some places we wouldn't get access to, and some places we would get access to. We generally try to find a way. We need a hospital. We ask everybody in the unit, bhai, किसके पास doctor है? Anybody knows a doctor in this hospital? And then we find somebody who has, and then we ask, and then we go there and shoot. So that's how we do it.
Kenny, welcome to this special masterclass to celebrate you, to celebrate your distinctive voice, and to walk us through the art of low-budget filmmaking. And I really think you're the right person to really bestow wisdom on this one topic. We've already introduced you, but I just want to talk a little bit about, to really put this man's body of work in perspective, if you let me. You've made 5 feature films so far, including Lokal Utpat. You've already shot and finished your 6th film, if I'm not wrong, and you're all set to start Local Kung Fu 3 later next year. This year. So you just make all of us look bad. Your first feature film, Local Kung Fu, was made on a budget of less than 1 lakh. Your films have, of course, traveled around the world in festivals. Lokal Utpat, if I'm not wrong, is the highest grossing Assamese comedy film to date.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Yeah, you absolutely should say that. I mean, it's a hell of an achievement. You should be very proud of it. Your film, Suspended Inspector Boro, won multiple awards at the Assam State Film Awards. You've also written a novel called Chocolate Guitar Momos, which I think is the greatest title I've ever heard in my life. And I look forward to reading that. You've obviously, as mentioned, also acted in various mainstream films, including one people might have heard of called Jawan. So it's been an interesting couple of months, but not a bad few years.
Yes, I can't complain. And in case I say anything ulta pulta, please blame it on me just arriving yesterday. So I'm a little lightheaded. So if I say anything too out of the way or out of line, please forgive me in advance.
Coming to what we really want to pick your brain on, and sort of so many people want your advice on, is the art of low budget filmmaking and creating something that people love when your resources are limited. So I thought it might help to just walk through the life cycle of one film, and you can sort of talk us through every aspect of that. So let's start with the scripting stage, of course. I'm an aspiring filmmaker. I'm setting out to make my first film. I obviously have limited sort of resources. So when it comes to scripting, would you advise write the story that you feel for and then later figure out how to then make it within the means you have? Or would you advise looking at what's available to me and then reverse engineering what story can I like realistically tell with what I actually have?
I would say when we are starting out, the reverse engineering way to do it is the right way. People who live here in Ladakh, you point the camera anywhere, it's gorgeous, anywhere. So that the number one thing is location, I guess, when it comes to the look of a film. And see what other resources you have. The examples that I gave when starting out for Local Kung Fu, I had the resources of my martial arts friends, since we already had good chemistry together and we grew up practicing all these fights together. That was my main resource. So similarly, everybody has some kind of resource or the other. Somebody's uncle might be working in a railway yard. That railway yard might be a good location for something. Somebody might have access to a Bhoot Bangla. You might want to shoot at the Bhoot Bangla. So yeah, look at what resources you have that are probably unique to you, that other people might have, that we might not see easily. Somebody might have access to, say, a gym, an MMA gym, a karate dojo or something. So see what you have access to and build from there.
So your advice is, if I want to make an action film, definitely have martial arts friends. That's a good start. Start young. There's also something very interesting I read that you said in an interview about scripting. You said that when you're writing your script, you should already be thinking about your trailer. What did you mean by that?
This is actually something Sri Ram Raghavan had told us during a workshop, and it stuck with me ever since, because nowadays, a lot of times people decide to watch films in the theater based on the trailer. So the trailer had better be really, really kick-ass. And Like for Inspector Boro, for example, my entry shot, I knew that that would be in the trailer. So we gave a lot of attention to that particular shot. We took about 17 takes of it. And then when we went home and started editing, we saw that our good take was slightly out of focus. So the next week we went back again and shot that shot again because that was very important. So while we are going through, while we are writing, we should know, okay, this is in the trailer, this is the point where we are going to introduce the hero. This is the point where we're going to introduce the villain. So which shot are we going to put in the trailer? So that needs to be done while writing.
So you're thinking about that from day one, and then that informs how you then shoot those scenes, knowing that this is a important one.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so let's say that you've managed to write a script, and sort of you think you've done it in a realistic way, keeping in mind resources that are accessible to you. I imagine the next stage is to assemble a team, assemble sort of a crew that'll help me make this come alive. Assuming I don't have many filmmaker friends, how would you advise going about it?
I started out with the Canon 550D. That was the camera that I could afford at the time. It cost 43,000. Nowadays, I guess a lot of mobile phones are good enough to make a big screen feature with. So technically, there's not too much to, things are much less costly. If you look at the reel ka zamana, where one can of reel cost 14,000 and then you get just 10 minutes of shooting out of it, those days are thankfully gone and we can shoot much cheaper. So what will matter now more is actually what you see on screen and whether what you see on screen will hold your viewers' attention, which is why the scripting stage is very important. I would advise everybody who's setting out to make an audience-friendly film it's very important that your main character or main characters want something very badly, and it has to be important. Lokal Utpat, for example, we start out by wanting the hero to impress the heroine's family, and then it turns out to wanting that 9,44,000. So that want has to be something very significant, very important. You look at any films that are successful, there's always something that the main characters want. So this is very, very important when you're making your films. If you want to make the kind of film where you shoot anything and then cut it together anyway, that's fine. You can do that, but it won't be audience friendly.
But what about the crew? Like how do I go about finding people?
Here again, the first local kung fu was pretty much a one-man army thing for me. I was the director, writer, editor, driver, cook, electrician, lightman, everything. I bought a couple of 200-watt bulbs and some 100-watt bulbs and put them in my uncle's drawing room, and that's how we lit it. So the good thing about that was that I got to learn the tiny basics of everything. Then once this came out, people started liking it, and then as I worked in other projects, I started meeting people who I realized I could trust. So I did a little bit of work with them. For example, my line producer since donkey's years now, his name is Anupam Boshya. I met him while I was acting in another Assamese film. A very cool, level-headed guy who keeps every hisab right to the pie, and I've worked with him ever since. I don't dare making a film without him because he's the one who manages everything, the hisab, kitab, the crew and all. So yeah, we start off by alone probably, but gradually with time and a little bit of luck, we find some people whom we can trust.
So would you then advise, again, in that world where I'm setting out to make my first feature, would you advise that I try and do as much by myself as possible?
It depends. If you have people who are genuinely passionate and whom you don't have to pester all the time, bhai, kar dena, kar dena, kar dena. If you have to pester somebody, kar dena, then better do it yourself. Even now at this stage, when I have to get the sound done sometimes, I give it to somebody to do it, and then they take a really long time or they do a crappy job, and then I say, mujhe hi kar lena chahiye tha. So that still happens in some cases, but yeah, keep on working, and hopefully on the way, you meet good people. I have the same line producer, same production manager, same DOP for right since Local Kung Fu 2 now. So I've been very blessed that way.
So then let's say that you sort of, a great team has fallen in your lap. You found people who you really think believe in the project like you do, and you don't have to keep chasing, and you have faith in, and they're as passionate as you are. I imagine the next part comes down to money. You know, you mentioned buying a lot of bulbs. So what is your advice in terms of raising funds? Is it friends? Is it family? I know this film was crowdfunded. So how do you navigate? I've got a script, and I think I've got something special here. How do I raise the funds to get it made?
I wish I knew the answer. I would have probably made many more films by now. Every film has had a different story. Local Kung Fu 1 was made with 1 lakh rupees that mom had set aside. The theatrical release of the film was funded by somebody else who watched the film in Bombay and liked it. So he said, I'll sponsor the release. So that's how it happened. Local Kung Fu 2 happened. I had made enough money by then to invest some of my own and also partially crowdfunded. That's how that happened. Then again, Inspector Boro, somebody came along as a co-producer. So he and we shared that one. Then Local Utpat was again funded by me and by 1,274 crowdfunders. So everything has been different. And there are other people who have managed to find financiers and producers much more easily than me. But then again, that comes with the own set of, like, if somebody says, I'll put in money, but I want my wife to play this role, or I want my beta or beti to play this role. So that's another thing that you have to negotiate with. So there's no one fixed path. Everybody has to, I guess, find their own way.
So I guess is the lesson that be aware of what you're losing in that sort of scenario, what you're being asked to do, what the cost is. You also said something I read which said, never, you were talking about friends and family. You said never ask for money from people who can't afford to lose it. Was that when you're sort of reaching out to family? Is that what you meant?
When somebody is going to finance a film, one thing that they should know is पैसा वापस आएगा कि नहीं कोई guarantee नहीं है. So if somebody has their, like, 10 सालों से 10 लाख इकट्ठा किया है, film बना लो, 10 का 20 कर दो, that might not happen. So that person, if he invests that 10 lakhs and then something goes wrong with the film, there's some kind of natural disaster and your main location is not there anymore, or one very important character has passed away, anything can happen. So you should not be in a position where that person is completely beholden for that money just to you. So never put yourself in a position like that. If a person has 10 lakhs and can afford to lose 1 or 2 and not be too heart attacky about it, then yeah, 1-2 lakh, fine, you can borrow from him, but not that entire 10.
So then you mentioned locations before. Let's talk a bit about locations, because I imagine that's its own art form. So let's assume that you don't have family members and friends who have easy access to the kind of locations you want, So do you have any sort of tips and tricks of how to get access to locations? Does it become a nightmare of permissions and things like that? Do you have a way around those things? How do you find locations that are friendly to let you shoot?
This was also reverse engineered. So I knew that we had this location and that location. We knew that we had access to these locations, like the colorful house that you see that Breakup Guru has, that's also a relative's house. So since that suited the character of a Breakup Guru, so we asked the relative if we could shoot there and he let us shoot. So that's how it worked out. Now, if I need to shoot something on a train, for example, that's another huge line of headaches and all. So when we went to ask for permission for shooting in a train for Local Kung Fu 2, the officer told us, if you want to officially ask us, then you have to do a 25,000 ka bond and sign this and sign that and all and blah, 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 blah. Otherwise, if it's just you guys and a small camera and all, then hame kuch nahi pata. Don't tell us, we don't know. So that's how we did it. We used the don't tell us approach.
So I guess that's a filmmaker's dream, right? How do I find access to all of those guys to find ways around the system?
It depends. There are some places we wouldn't get access to and some places we would get access to. We generally try to find a way. We need a hospital. We ask everybody in the unit, bhai, kisi ke paas doctor hai? Anybody knows a doctor in this hospital? And then we find somebody who has, and then we ask, and then we go there and shoot. So that's how we do it.
So then, did you ever have a stage where you just had like a massive spreadsheet of all your closest friends and family with all the locations they have access to? Like some cousin is a teacher, says like, can I get a school? Like, does that
Yeah, we do
help?
that. Our main villain of Local Kung Fu 1, he lives right next to a school, and he's been practicing martial arts in that school for a long time. So we said, we'll shoot here, and we shot there.
So it really is just all about the hustle and just
Yeah,
asking
yeah.
everyone and hoping
Pretty
for the
much,
best.
yeah.
You mentioned sort of the camera before. I obviously have to ask you about equipment as well. Obviously, that can be very pricey, and I imagine it can be very daunting as well. You know, you're setting out to make a film, and maybe you feel a pressure to get the fanciest of everything. But how do you work your way around that? I was watching a masterclass by Joe Swanberg, who's a indie director in Hollywood, and he had a hack where he said he used to, when he made his first film, he used to get a credit card, go buy everything he needed, take care of it, spend 10, 11 days shooting, and then return all of it by the end. And then so, you know, put it all on credit card, no cost spent there. But yeah, do you have any sort of hacks or ways around that one? Or how do you work through the pressure of feeling like, okay, I need the best of everything for my first film?
We don't really need the best of everything. And the other thing is, to an extent, ignorance is bliss. Now, while we started out, when we started making Local Kung Fu, the Canon 550D was very good for us. It was fantastic. We didn't think of shooting on an Alexa or something at that point of time. We knew कि हमारे पास यही है, इसी से करना पड़ेगा. So just do it. And the only things to be concerned about is to have a decent enough level of visual and decent audio quality. The audio should be good. If your audio is bad, then it gets very distracting. So that's something I would always stress on, that the audio should be good. And for that, over the years, what's helped me also is that I also learned audio software. My brother is a music producer. So I also learned to compose and arrange some songs on audio software, and that helped me while I was dubbing, because I myself did the dubbing of my films. So I sit there and I direct everyone while we are dubbing. So again, that learn everything yourself, that helped. And the same thing would apply with footage as well. If you edit yourself, which I think every director should do, everybody who wants to make a film should know editing. That is the number one skill. So everybody should learn to edit, and then just have a minimum level of, not minimum, as good as you can make it.
So just keep learning and be a constant student, I guess.
Yeah, keep learning.
What about, you know, so much is said nowadays about all you need is an iPhone. You know, the iPhone filmmaking, have a friend with an iPhone, find someone with an iPhone. Is it as simple and easy as it sounds? Find a great iPhone and that sort of can help all your camera needs, or is it slightly more complicated than that?
I think it could. You could do it. You could shoot a film with an iPhone also, but what you are shooting needs to be very interesting. Which is why, more than the equipment, more than anything else, the two things I stress most on are scripting and casting. The script has to be very kadak. Your main character or characters should want something very badly, and we should be interested in knowing how are they going to achieve this. We should be interested in knowing that. And second, your casting has to be very, very on point. I auditioned everybody. Even though we were making a film for free, I auditioned everybody, because if a character has just one line, if that line is the punchline of a joke, and if they screw the punchline, that joke is useless. We shot that scene for nothing. So I auditioned everybody. Even the kidney surgeon, Dr. Kabir Pratap Singh in Local Utpat, he's been with us since Local Kung Fu 1. But I wanted to know whether he could pull off this character, so I auditioned even him. So always audition everybody.
So then how do you then go through the casting process? You know, you're looking for a set of actors, you want to audition, you're obviously hoping to meet as many actors as possible, but chances are you probably won't be able to pay them that much. How do you have those conversations? How do you approach actors? You know, how do you navigate those conversations?
If you're shooting a very first film with no budget, then you'll have to find actors from among friends and family, or from acting aspirants. Then again, it depends on what kind of budget you have. अपना तो इतना था कि we can't pay you anything. We'll just eat momos and noodles at the end of the day. And maybe you might get enough money to pay a phone bill, perhaps. That was it at Local Kung Fu 1. Thankfully, after Local Kung Fu 2, we managed to pay everybody some decent amounts. But then, when you start out, We'll probably have to find talented friends and family or spot people who are exact for the role that you want.
So never underestimate how far people will go for good momos. That's the lesson there. Okay, so let's say you've managed to put all of this together. You have a cast and crew you're happy with, the equipments, the locations. I imagine an essential part of this, especially when you're keeping budget in mind, is a solid, is pre-production and having a proper schedule in place to ensure that I'm shooting is exactly as much as I need. I'm as organized as possible, so I'm not sort of running around in different directions. So what is the art of being as organized as possible and having a very sort of efficient pre-production process?
That is very, very important. Which is why your script needs to be very correct. You need to know exactly at which locations you are shooting what scenes. You are shooting scene 2, then you're shooting scene 84, then you're shooting scene 84A. You need to know exactly what you are shooting where, so that once you leave and then you suddenly remember, "Arey, ye bhi to phone ka shot lena tha, hum bhul gaye," and then you can't go back to that location for whatever reason. So stuff like this keeps on happening, which is why you need to be very, very organized. Know exactly what you're going to shoot, which are the actors you'll need, which are the costumes and props you'll need. So be very, very organized. Again, when we started out, Local Kung Fu 1, it was a completely non-professional thing. So my main villain is a school teacher. He's a PT teacher. He would go to school, come back home, have a bit of khana, and then we would fight for 2 hours. So that way, 21 afternoons from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., we would shoot the climax fight. So that's how it happened. That was our level of organization at that point. So yeah.
So, one thing you're saying that is becoming increasingly clear, which a lot of filmmakers have spoken about, which is know as much as you can, whether it's knowing how to edit, really knowing every aspect of the filmmaking process. So at least you are as reliant on yourself as possible. So are there any resources that you recommend, whether they're YouTube channels, whether places you can go to really understand the specifics of all these fields? So I am trying my best to be a one-man or one-woman army as far as possible. Are there any resources you'd recommend so I can really sort of educate myself as much as possible?
So you need to learn to edit. That is number one. Need to be proficient in some audio software also. A lot of the video software has audio components also. You can work with that, or you can learn an audio software separately. So over the years, there have been several YouTube channels also which I've followed. Pony Smasher, for example. David F. Sandberg, he started out making small horror shorts with just him and his wife in their apartment. Extremely creative. And then one of them, Lights Out, made it to festivals, all festivals, and won tons of awards. So Hollywood called him over and he made a feature version of that. And then he ended up making Annabelle Creation and then Shazam. So yeah, that's one very inspiring resource, Pony Smasher. And I can't remember any specifically right now, but the internet is full of excellent resources on editing, shooting, sound work, etc. So there's lots. I can't remember the specifics yet.
I wanted to ask you about sound specifically because, in my experience, sound is the one place where a lot of early filmmakers fall short. The most, maybe they overlook it, maybe they're sort of more focused on the visuals. So what are the areas you feel that, aspiring filmmakers, stumble the most when it comes to sound?
So I'll tell you the 3 most important things that I think have helped me in my sound work. One is to have a mic for dubbing. One is to have a stereo recorder for recording ambiances and sound effects. And the third is to have audio software. So if you have this, you can dub all your dialogue. If you have a stereo recorder, you can record sound effects and ambiances and whatever and whatnot. And then you can put them together in the software. So these 3 things are very important. And if you can do this, then a huge chunk of your post-production work is taken care of. It'll take time to learn, of course, but it's really been worth it for me.
And what about working with the actors? What if I'm a filmmaker? I know what I want, but I don't quite know how to get it out of my actors. I don't know how to sort of have that conversation or communicate that to them effectively. I just want to crawl into their brain and wish we're on the same wavelength, and that's not always the case. So how do I make sure that I'm getting the performances I want out of them?
Since I'm an actor myself, I generally, if somebody is not giving me what I want, I just show them and ask them to copy it. This approach is not going to work for everybody, of course, but that's been my path. There are sometimes if you need to look worried, for example, sometimes you probably don't need to just all you just need is to just maintain just think about being worried. So this bit of instruction that I've given myself, sometimes if you tell that to an actor, then it'll work for them. And there are some whom you will have to show exactly what to do. You'll have to tell them, okay, furrow your brows a bit. And so sometimes you might have to give them that bit of instruction to get exactly the result that you want.
Speaking of you being an actor, you are, as a filmmaker, making these sort of small films, and again, your resources are limited. At the same time, you are acting in some of the biggest productions out there. Mary Com, Jawan, these are some of the biggest films. So when you're on set, do you ever feel like, I want to steal that food, I want to steal that chair, I want to steal that vanity van, I want to steal everything? Does that ever just come to you that I wish I had this for my film?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I see the lenses, Harry Master Prime, okay, 12 lakh ka lens, isi ko le jata hu. But then where am I gonna, you'll need the whole kit and everything, so that's obviously not possible. And then Jawan, the jail set, for example, I heard that the set for that women's jail, just the cost of the set was 45 lakhs or something. And अपन के तो एक पूरी picture release तक हो जाएगी 45 lakhs में.
That's 45 local kung fus.
45 local kung fu, just the shooting part and giving everybody momos and noodles and no payment.
So your advice then is, if you ever find yourself on the set of a big film, have a very big bag and see what you can put in it. That makes sense. I also then, let's say that you've had the shoot and you think it's gone well. When it comes to editing, when it comes to the post-production process and being as organized as possible, what's your advice there? Either for a filmmaker who's editing their film themselves, or maybe they're working with an editor, how do I make the most out of that process while, not losing objectivity and making it as efficient as possible?
I've cut almost all my films myself. And what I do is, after it's reached a significantly final stage of cutting where all the dialogue is understandable. Oh, one more thing I need to tell all aspiring filmmakers is, never show your film when it's not complete to people who are not part of the film industry. Because if you show your film without color, if you show them just the raw footage, they'll say, color hi to nahi hai, ya itna andhera kyun hai? And if you show it to them without proper sound, without proper music, they won't understand the dialogue and there'll be gaps in the understanding and they won't get anything. So never show anybody except your crew who has worked on it. Never show anybody your rough cuts or whatever. Wait till it's really, really at a polished stage before you show the general public. I have made this mistake before, so I'm telling you guys now. And
you'll be drowning in opinions and you get confused.
Not just that, they don't get what the actual product was supposed to be. It's like you're giving them a half-cooked biryani and you're telling them, nahi, nahi, ye acha hoga baad mein. It's too late by then. So, and also, after I'm done at a stage where it's almost ready to show people, then I start calling friends and showing them, and I sit behind and I watch their reactions. I don't ask them kaisa laga. I sit behind and I watch their body language. I watch whether their cheeks are going up, smiling. I watch at which points they shift. So those are the actual markers of where your film might be dipping a little bit. So the body language communicates much more to me than what they actually say. And of course, afterwards, if they have something to say, if 7 out of 10 people are saying the same thing, that the first half is kind of long, then I will think of cutting the first half. If it's just one person's opinion, I probably won't pay that much attention to it. If everybody is saying the same thing, then yes, you need to listen.
I guess that's one advantage of your films having so much comedy that you can't deny the purity of the reaction of a laugh.
Yeah.
A laugh is a laugh,
Yeah.
a joke is a joke. But what about that? What about speaking of feedback? I'm suppose you're a filmmaker who's not as stern and stubborn about your opinion, and whether it's at the scripting stage or after you have a first cut in place, I'm showing it to people, and I'm getting, I'm drowning in opinions. People are telling me what they think and what they think I should do, and I'm trying to hold on to my vision, but I can't not be affected by that stuff. How do you? Because I imagine that's a very messy mental space to be in. That I know the film I want to make. How do I know what part of this feedback is constructive and what's random and what's going to change the film I want to make?
You need to pay most attention to those people who like the same films that you like. If you have friends and you generally share the same taste in cinema and they give you a particular feedback, then yeah, you need to pay attention to that, because you can't please everybody. You need to make the best you can for yourself and for your friends and family, and hopefully that will extrapolate to the rest of the public. So you can't listen to everybody. If everybody says the same thing, yes, listen to it, but you can't go in 100 different directions.
So I guess it's you have to find a mind space where you're sort of sure of yourself, but you're still open to feedback if you think it helps you.
Yeah.
Also, in the post-production phase, that's another place where you could look for new collaborators. And I wanted to ask you about the art of the call it the social media hustle or the networking hustle. The other day, I was talking to a director, Mukund Narayan, who has a short film here, Patalti, showing later today. And he talked about how for his film, he managed to get Rasul Pukuti to do his sound and Sangyuta Kaza to edit. And these are sort of some of the best out there to edit his film. And that was through sheer determination, Instagram being very enterprising and really just being one of those filmmakers who are hustling and managed to get the attention of very sort of senior filmmakers to help on his film. So do you have any advice on that of like, if I wanted to try my luck and see if I could get sort of people to help, how do I go about it? How am I not too pushy, but also, how do you find that?
That is something that I completely am the wrong person to ask, because I'm not a very pushy person. I'll ask somebody something and then maybe I'll ask them again a bit later. And if there's no response, I'm not going to keep on pushing and poking. So that's a two-edged sword. If you can hustle and get somebody, if you can get a big name to work on your film, if it works out, then well and good. And the other hand is that if you have somebody really big, you can't really tell them, I don't think this is working, because tu kaun hai be? So yeah, it's a double-edged sword. I've generally worked with people whom I know I'll be comfortable with this give and take and the back and forth.
Do you have young filmmakers sliding into your DMs, asking for advice, asking you for help on their films? Does that happen a lot?
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
And I say the same thing everywhere. Casting and scripting, the two main things.
So let's say that my first cut is in place. At what stage of this film are you thinking about release? Whether it is maybe I want to go theatrical, maybe I want to navigate the festival circuit, maybe I want to look at streaming if that's an option for me. At what point in the process are you thinking about where I want this film to be or where it could go out to meet an audience?
My first love is always theatrical, because I want to sit with the audience and laugh. Or ultimately, if I make a horror film, when the scare comes, I want people to be screaming. So my top priority is always theatrical. The two series that I have made, I've known from the outset, they've been commissioned by an OTT, by a regional OTT. So those I knew are going to be series. Otherwise, I'm always in theatrical mode.
I think with your film specifically, that communal experience adds so much to it. You want to laugh, but you want to laugh with people as well. But if we talk about festivals specifically, for a young filmmaker embarking on the world of navigating festivals, it's very daunting. There's there's fees, there's strategies, there's people about, where should my premiere be? Am I shooting myself in the foot? Is this a good festival? Is it going to help me? What section? It's just a very messy world if you don't have the knowledge beforehand. So what advice would you have for a filmmaker who has made a film, maybe it's a feature, maybe it's a short, and really wants to send it out to festivals, but maybe doesn't know exactly where to start or what the best way is to go about it?
I don't know either. Festivals don't like my films. They're too, what shall I say? Are they too entertaining for festivals? I don't know. With a few exceptions like this and Oceans. Oceans liked local kung fu way back in 2013 or 12, and one more festival. But apart from that, everyone else is pretty much nahi, 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 nahi chahiye.
I spoke to a programmer about that first screening of your film at Oceans,
Okay.
and she said that it brought the house down. But I think it's like I said, it's just, people have an image of what an indie film is, and you watch something like this, and it's just so fun. I don't know another word for it, and you have such a
Thank you
wonderful
so
time.
much. Thank you.
I wanted to ask you about festivals as well because it is a tricky one. But what about theatrical? Because you've said that if you want to go down the theatrical route, you have to be very aware of how expensive that could be. Everyone wants it as a filmmaker's dream, but there is a big cost attached to it. So how do I navigate that? How do I know if my film even has a chance? Am I being deluded? Am I sort of shooting my film in the foot? How do I know if that's the right route for my film?
The market now will dictate. So we were talking with Danish last night, and he said that by next year there will probably be 8 theaters in J&K and Ladakh. We in Assam have 40, 50 theaters. So whatever we can get out of 40, 50 theaters is what we have to work with. Local Utpat did business of 1.4 crore over there. So which means we get about 40% of that, which is about 60. So we know that this is approximately the amount of money that we can get from our film. Then there have been other big films, big star wale films. Recently, the biggest hit has been a film called Raghupati, which did business of 13 crores. So we know that out of our 50, 60 theaters, we can get this much of business. So we need to know the market. And if somebody is making a Hindi film and they want to go theatrical, then again, that's a completely different game. If you don't have a star, who's going to come to watch it? Even if you have a star, there will still be other factors attached to it. So one needs to be very clear what the market is, what language are you making it in, and what kind of market does that language have.
And what you mentioned about the release, I guess the ideal there is if you do want to do a theatrical release, it's do your research. Know that what are the films like mine that have tried theatrical release, just to see if it's even possible. Is it feasible? Is that fair? To see that, is there any chance of my film having a chance in theaters?
A film doing well in theaters is like a perfect storm. Everything has to work.
Yeah.
Your release date, the content of the film, the stars in the film, everything came together at the right time for Local Utpat. Two major mistakes that I have made in my films, theatrical releases. One big mistake was with Suspended Inspector Boro. The mistake that I made there was to give it a very elitist title. Suspended Inspector Boro is a very good title for us who are used to speaking in English and all, but let's say somebody really liked the film and is not, say, as educated, this education level. If he has to tell somebody else कि ये film अच्छी लगी, नाम क्या था? Suspension, Sub-Inspector, कुछ तो था. So that's what happened in case of that film. Then another mistake I've made was my last film, Kikwa Dosti. We originally started making it as a series, as a sitcom. We wanted to do an Assamese version of Friends. So we had 4 guys and 3 girls, and something that we could watch repeatedly, a comfort viewing kind of thing. While we were shooting it, we had a lot of fun. We laughed a lot while we were editing it and we were showing it to people. Everybody was laughing, everybody was enjoying it. So we thought, why not put this out as a theatrical? So we put together a theatrical cut, and I shot one fight scene at the end also for the theatrical bit to make it a bit more cinema type. Now, the mistake that we made here was when people watch a film in a theater, they want a big screen experience. They want something bhari bharkam to have happened. They want the stakes to be high, a matter of life and death, a matter of getting married, not getting married, a matter of naukri milegi, nahi milegi, all these things. It has to be something heavy. In Kikwa Dosti, what happened was that the stakes were just, there is a very irritating roommate who has zabardasti come and is staying with the girls now, and she needs to be kicked out of the house. This is a very low stakes thing. So even though people laughed, at the end of the day, they didn't feel like they had watched a movie because the stakes were so low. It's just about chasing this girl out of the house. What's the big deal in that? So that's why this film didn't do too well. So that's another thing I've learned now. Hopefully there won't be too many mistakes to learn from as we go by.
What about, you mentioned the theatrical aspect, but what if I managed to get a release for my film? Maybe I've got a couple of festival screenings, maybe it's on a platform, maybe it's theatrical. It's a small film. Maybe I don't have the biggest names. I want to put my life on the line to promote this film. I want as many people as possible who would be into something like this to watch it. I have my social media channels and I will, spam the hell out of, people until they get annoyed with me. But, you have that compulsion inside that I just wish I could infiltrate the minds of 300 people or 3,000 people to say, please watch this film. I want to make people aware of it. Do you have any sort of hacks on how to promote a film when you don't have the biggest social media following, you don't have access to, there are no stars in your film, etc.? How do you get the word out?
Again, this thing is something too complicated to navigate. The only thing I can say is that if we have a genre, if we know what our genre is, then that would help to some extent. But it's a very difficult field to navigate. So everyone's got to find their own way, I guess. A random example, the tree of life. How are you going to sell the tree of life? What are you going to tell audiences? Kya dekhne ko milega? What's there in it? So if you have a specific genre, then yes, you can say, right, the Zodiac, it's about the Zodiac killer in the 70s and the efforts of the cops to catch him. Yeah, okay, you can pigeonhole it in one way and people have an expectation. But if something is radically different, how are you going to sell it? Everybody's got to find their own way.
So ideally, is there a way, if I'm telling someone about it and wanting them to watch my film, find a sexy log line that I can sell it in sort of a line to make them interested in it?
Yeah, that's one thing that we would need, yeah.
Well, with that, we will open it up to the audience. If anyone has any questions, so can you please put your hands up? If not, I'm happy to grill him. I have a lot more to ask. Yes, we have someone here on the second row.
बीइंग अ डायरेक्टर आप उस फिल्म की डायरेक्शन भी करते हो, ऊपर से एक्टिंग भी करते हो, तो दोनों कैसे टैकल कर लेते हो साथ में, एक्टिंग और डायरेक्शन दोनों?
इतने टाइम से कर रहा हूँ कि इतना सोचा नहीं इसके बारे में. हम बस शॉट ले लेते हैं, देन बाद में प्लेबैक देखते हैं, एंड इफ इट्स ऑल राइट देन ठीक है. समटाइम्स क्या होता है, व्हाइल आई एम एक्टिंग, the director's hat is also going on sometimes, and then I'm also judging कि इसने line सही बोला कि नहीं, and then I forget my own. So that happens sometimes, but it's something that you get used to.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Are you ever directing in character if you're playing someone very silly and wacky, but you're also in the film, but then you also have to be the director, so do you just stay in character as a lovable cartoon?
I try to stay in character, and as an actor, 2-3 things are going on in your head at the same time. What's my line? What's this guy going to say? And I should not bump into this table. And if he says this, I'm supposed to say that. So 2-3 things are going on in your head. As a director, you add one more layer. Is this guy doing it correctly?
We've got another question here in the second row.
Kenny sir, मेरा आपसे एक क्वेश्चन है. हमारा लद्दाख का पॉपुलेशन 3 लाख है, 3 lakhs, और शायद असम का पॉपुलेशन इज़ मोर देन 3 करोड़. तो आप क्या सजेस्ट करेंगे, हम कितने बजट में फिल्म बनाएं कि कुछ उसमें कमाएं?
Actually, honestly, that is the सबसे बड़ी प्रॉब्लम वही है कि मतलब पॉपुलेशन कितना है. आसाम का पॉपुलेशन, असमी स्पीकिंग पॉपुलेशन इज़ 1.5 करोड़. तो उसी में फिल्म में वही, दैट इज़ योर मार्केट, लिमिटेड मार्केट. एंड देन अगेन माई ट्राइब, माई फादर्स ट्राइब इज़ बोरो, मदर्स ट्राइब इज़ देवरी. ये फिर 2 अलग अलग लैंग्वेजेस हैं. बोरो ट्राइब का पॉपुलेशन है अबाउट 30 लाख. सो जो बोरो फिल्में बनती हैं उनका बजट इज़ 10-20 lakhs अप्रॉक्सीमेटली. एंड उनका क्या है, शोज़ के लिए थिएटर्स भी नहीं है. जिन इलाकों में बोरो पॉपुलेशन ज़्यादा है वहाँ पे सिर्फ 2 थिएटर्स हैं. सो वहाँ पे क्या होता है, दुर्गा पूजा के पंडाल्स में स्क्रीनिंग करते हैं, स्क्रीनिंग विद प्रोजेक्टर्स एंड स्टफ. सो how it happens is they release the trailer around September and they put a contact number at the end of the trailer, and then the local puja committees, they will call up and book the film कि so and so date पे हमें आपकी फिल्म चाहिए, हम दिखा देंगे. And then the committee gives X amount of money to them. So that's how it works for the Boro films where the population is 30 lakhs. Now with a limited population of 3 lakhs, yes, it's going to be harder.
So know your market, I guess. So, martial arts, music, and you're an actor. You're setting the bar very high for aspiring filmmakers.
Jack of all trades.
We have another question here in the second row.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for all the tips that you have given. So I want to ask a deep question, which is about, like, suppose I'm making a film on a specific community who comes from, suppose, say, I belong from a different tribe in the Northeast. So I want to make a film whose character is from that community. And suppose I'm trying to build a character, but I'm not able to find someone who will portray that character like how I want it. And now you know that, like, in this time, many people, for example, if I cast someone who happens to be from another community, in a sense, okay, I'm making a film on Tripuri people, and the actor who will play my character is not from my community. So how, like, it's an open space, and many people criticize, and they say that, okay, a person from that community should play the role instead of being given to someone else, because there is also this notion of maintaining authenticity, you know. So how do you, like, what's your take on this? Like, how, if I am making a film and the actor is from a different community, so how would I train the actor so that he or she will know the customs, or how, like, the bones and everything, flesh of that character, so that the person who's from a different community will be able to portray their character that I wanted very, like, authentically. Yes. Thank you.
The first thing to see is what language is it being made in. Are you making it in that same language of the community? If you are making in the same language as the community, then yes, I would suggest work very, very hard and look much harder. Look for somebody of the community, somebody who can speak the language, because somebody else coming in and playing a role and speaking a different language, no matter how much they learn the lines, the tune will not be correct. So I'm making a film in Boro also, which is my father's language, and I am casting only Boro actors and actresses in it because the language needs to be proper. I can't have somebody else come in and say the lines because the tune will be completely different and immediately pakda jayega. So we have to have somebody who knows the language properly, always.
Kenny, thank you so much,
Thank you so much,
for this.
Sachin.
Thank you for imparting wisdom and educating us. And I really look forward to being here back on the stage with you in a few years to discuss the art of a great superhero movie. So fingers crossed. But thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.